The Western Conference, as always, is an absolute bloodbath. We got like a week left for the NBA season, and the difference between the 3 seed and the 8 seed is 2 total games. With a week left, the difference between hosting a playoff series and missing it completely, potentially, is a half of a game. That is ridiculous. Some teams are playing great, phenomenal basketball right now. Minnesota Timberwolves 5-game win streak. Clippers 4-game win streak. They were just the 9th seed not too long ago. They're the 5 seed right now. You got teams that are not playing so great, like the Denver Nuggets. But if I go up just a little bit, we got the Houston Rockets, who haven't officially clinched the 2 seed, but they are very, very close to clinching it. They ain't really got to worry about this last week of the NBA season as much as some of the other teams. And I think that what the Rockets have done this season is kind of getting lost. So I kind of want to talk about it because this has been one of my favorite individual seasons from any team. But before we talk about this season, let's take a look back on last year. I know y'all remember they had that spurt in March where they went on a double-digit game win streak. I don't remember if it was 11 games, 10 games, whatever. And they ended the season as a 500 team. There was a moment last year where people questioned, will the Houston Rockets be able to catch up with the Golden State Warriors and take that 10 seed? They didn't. But they showed the blueprint of what the team could potentially be. But going into the season, it was kind of hard for me individually to project what the Rockets were going to do. Going back to that video where I was doing projections, I had them on the outside looking in because a lot of people are looking at the Memphis Grizzlies, who had one of the most injury-riddled seasons ever in the history of this sport. They're going to have Ja Morant back, they're going to have Desmond Bane back, and then they already discovered players like Vince Williams Jr., Gigi Jackson. They should be back to being a playoff team. People are riding the San Antonio Spurs. Victor Wembanyama just had a ridiculous rookie season, and he got better and better and better, and he could be a top 10 player in the league. That might mean that the Spurs can host a play-in series or a play-in game. The Pelicans, though they lost Zion Williamson in the play-in game, you just think about it, man, the Pelicans are putting some stuff together, and they made a trade for DeJounte Murray. So this league, this conference that was already ridiculously tough last year should get tougher, and this young Rockets team may not have enough to really compete. Well, we were wrong. I think even the most optimistic Rockets fan going into last season couldn't have projected that they would be the 2 seed in the Western Conference. That is insane. And when I say things are getting lost, when you look at where teams are right now, I've seen a lot of conversations over the last 2 weeks like, hey, being a play-in team, being one of those 7 and 8 seed teams is not that bad because if you win that game, you get the Rockets in the first round. And a lot of people are looking at the Rockets as like, I don't know, this team that's going to get dominated by a more experienced team like a Minnesota or one of these 7-8 matchup teams. And though that might be the case, I think that really diminishes what the hell or who the hell the Rockets have been this season. Last year, Ime Udoka, Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Jeff Green, all of the veterans and the new coach they brought in really set the identity of the Houston Rockets being this gritty, defensive-oriented, get all in your face team, right? And this year, they've taken it to a whole new level as they're tied for the second best defense in all of basketball, right? The thing that has shifted this year to make them get to the point where they're winning 50-plus games, which again is crazy to say aloud when you think about what this roster is that the offense is starting to catch up to what that defense is, and they're doing it in an untraditional way. They're one of the few teams in basketball that's top 10 in offense and defense. It's OKC, it's Houston, it's Minnesota, it's Boston, it is Cleveland, and Memphis. That's it. Those teams are top 10 on both sides of the ball. Houston is the first example I bring up when people talk to me. When people find out that I talk basketball for a living, specifically some of the older dudes, they talk about how uniform the game really is. Everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's chalking up threes. Everybody doing this. I say go watch a Houston Rockets game because they're one of the teams that we say the 8th best defense in basketball or 8th best offense in basketball while not being one of those teams that's getting up a ton of three-point shots. And it makes sense, right? If you look at their rosters, some of their starting units, you look at it and be like, yeah, there's not many plus shooters on this team. One of my favorite things about the Rockets season, and this basically happened over the last month or so, is the double big lineup between Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams. That lineup has dominated teams, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it showcases that like every team in ball is not playing the same way. Hell, even some of the other double big lineups in basketball, we talk about the Clevelands or the OKCs of the world, they have at least one of their bigs be like a guy that can hit a three-pointer, right? You think about Evan Mobley's three-point progression over the season or Chet Holmgren, who's always been a guy that can hit threes. The Houston Rockets, nah. Their double big lineup that they've been throwing out there randomly in games, they are legitimately sitting in the paint. And they're pairing that with Thompson, who is also not a shooter, not a spacer. They're one of the best interior passing teams I've seen since like I don't know, 2015 San Antonio Spurs or something like that. I have now watched back their game versus OKC multiple times because I thought it was one of the most phenomenal games of the season for them. Of course, OKC running Chet and Hartenstein, and then the Rockets decided to start both of their bigs together. The spacing on this team, again, is not going to be good. You think about how teams guard Amen Thompson. This is the guy, right here is the guy that is assigned regarding Amen Thompson. Look how much space is here. But one thing Amen Thompson has done so phenomenally this season is eat up open space. As Şengün beats his guy and Alex Caruso, Hardenstein has to come over or it's an easy layup. And then Steven Adams doing his best box out and boom, it's an Amen Thompson finish, right? By 2025 NBA standards, this is ridiculous spacing. First of all, what the hell is Jalen Green doing? First of all, but forget about that. He's been playing great ball, so we give him a pass here. But we have basically 4 offensive players sitting in the red area and all the defenders being there as well. Well, look what happens on this play. Big, good passing, man. This is just good passing. Steven Adams doing everything he can. Again, using his size. I love Steven Adams and always have. But Steven Adams, this is not something that he'll ever get credit for in the box score or something like that. But him doing this, hey, Şengün is about to get a shot up. I'm going to box out Isaiah Hartenstein, not just in case Alperen Şengün misses, but it eliminates Isaiah Hartenstein's ability to help on this play defensively at all, and it leads to Alperen Şengün scoring again. I could go on and on. This was something that happened in the third quarter of last night's game versus the Warriors. The Warriors have been one of the best defensive units in basketball, especially since the Jimmy Butler trade, right? This right here is just beautiful hoops, right? They're going to run Jalen Green off of this screen from Fred VanVleet. Everybody's expecting this handoff, right? And you're going to see Alperen Şengün do something that Draymond Green has done to defenders for 15 years, or however long Draymond Green been with Steph Curry, where you think like this is Jalen Green playing Steph Curry right now, where he's a threat. He's so much of a threat. Where Kevon Looney's like, I got to help, man. Jonathan Kuminga is 3 steps behind him. We got to make sure he don't get this, because if he get this, he's just going to pull up for 3. And in this game, he had it going from 3, right? Nah, I'm just going to take it for what I can. There's the help. Freddie is wide open, right? Yeah, that's a Fred VanVleet tray ball. Who's back here? Who's back here baseline run? And it's always Amen Thompson. Again, just showing my overall fascination of this double big lineup. So far, they've played 144 minutes together. They have an offensive rating of 127 and a defensive rating of 93. Small sample size, 144 minutes is not that large, but it's this number that stands out above all, where the offensive rebound rate, I'll round up for you. At one point, it was 50%, but now it's down to 47%, which means that for every 2 shots they take, about 1 of them, they're offensive rebounding. And that's how you get to the offensive rating being so damn good without the adequate amount of spacing. Ime Udoka's done such an amazing thing. And one of my favorite wins from them, again, this season is when they played against OKC, where they straight up just bullied Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, those 2 teams played against each other 5 times this season, so it's hard to really figure out what should you take away from this game, what shouldn't you take away from this game. But just taking that game at face value, those 2 bigs, Şengün and Adams, just work very well together. Let's talk about Amen Thompson, my boy Amen. I mentioned this before, but Amen Thompson is the type of prospect that I would give up so much for my favorite team to have on theirs. You know, like, of course, everybody wants the Wembys or the LeBrons, or generational talents, of course. But having a guy like Amen Thompson on your roster just changes the trajectory of your team. Because like I mentioned, he's one of the best baseline roamers in all of basketball. He's one of the best defensive players in all of basketball. And he's the best athlete maybe ever in this whole sport. Like, he is the perfect kind of player to have on pretty much any team, right? And you think about the lack of jump shooting, and maybe the jump shooting never does end up happening, but you're seeing him on a team at 21 years old that does not have spacing and still end up being ultra effective, right? So if he ever just becomes, let's say, league average shooter, I don't even know what to say his ceiling ultimately can be. Because if I was projecting, he's going to make an all defensive team this season, and he's 21 years old, y'all. He's going to make an all defensive case this season. And I think that's going to be the case for the entirety of his career. That guy and his brother care about stops. And that is a unique for somebody that young. And getting back to the original point of it kind of getting lost in like what the season really is, like, you think about the Detroit Pistons, right? The Detroit Pistons had one of the biggest total points jumps ever. Where I think they were the first team to ever triple. I almost said quadruple. That would have been crazy. Triple the amount of wins that they had the previous season. And that is the darling story of the season, which it should be. Like, the Pistons have been one of my favorite teams to watch. But because the Pistons did that much of a jump, it's just kind of neglected that the Houston Rockets have a young core as well and also playing great basketball. And I'm projecting a little bit here, but like right now, they're 11 games better than they were last season with 5 games left. So let's say they end up 13 total wins better than last season. That is a ridiculously impressive jump considering all the factors that we talked about going into the season. And then we get to talking about projections in the playoffs. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people are hoping that their favorite team sees the Houston Rockets. A lot of that conversation ends up being that the Rockets, in pretty much every series that they go in, won't have the best player on the court. And again, you think about who they could potentially go against. Against the Clippers, they won't have the best player. The Warriors, the Wolves. I mean, you can make the argument for the Grizzlies, I guess, but I probably wouldn't make that argument. So, like, they will be going in without having a 1A guy. And that's one of the major criticisms of the Houston Rockets, right? When it's going down to the nitty-gritty, how can they score in the clutch? And there have been times that I've watched them this season, and I question that as well. I think about their game versus the Lakers from last week, where they went through this stretch in the fourth quarter where they put up 0 made field goals. It ended up looking really, really ugly. And I think that's a warranted like critique of the team, right? All these other teams we mentioned, like, hey man, they got a 1A superstar or somebody very close to that. They're like, give that guy the ball and he can make something happen. Whether it's win or loss, we trust Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Nikola Jokic with that ball, and the Rockets don't really have that. The best thing they have to that is like a Jalen Green as far as a premier shot creator, or a Şengün who does close out games as well, but obviously those guys aren't at the same tier of closers as some of the other guys I mentioned just a couple seconds ago. And all that's cool. You can have those conversations, and I think, again, some of that is definitely warranted. But one of my least favorite things is that so many people neglect or devalue regular season success. I'm a guy that can recognize that championships and playoff series wins, all of that is very, very important. But I think ring culture has gone so far that it prevents people from really appreciating and being like, hey, so-and-so, this team or this player was really good, even if they didn't end up winning a championship or even if they didn't have a really far playoff run. In my mind, I look at rings as nothing but an additive to a player's resume. Oh, this guy was a bucket. He was really good, and he ended up with 2 championships. But I never look at a player and say, oh, that guy was really good, but no championship, so he couldn't have been that good. You know, it's always a positive and less of a negative when someone doesn't do it because there are so many individual factors. And the reason I'm bringing that up for the Houston Rockets again is that I do not believe that them being a 2 seed in the Western Conference, that they're going to go out there and win a championship. And that will be okay. I think I can still look at a 52-win team that average age is this and say, hey, that team had a phenomenal season. And it was one of the most fun teams to watch all season long. And that can be okay. There's just too much fake 1 seed, fake 2 seed, fake this seed, all of that conversation. I just never really understood it. It's like, are you watching these games and having fun with what the Houston Rockets did? One thing that got neglected throughout all of the Stephen A. Smith versus LeBron James stuff and before that is that there was a time when the Rockets were on a 10-game win streak. Not a single person said a goddamn word about it. Nobody cared. No, nobody cared at all. And the people that did talk about it was like, oh, it was a win against this team and this team and those teams, they very good. Well, they just beat the OKC Thunder, who are on pace to be one of the best regular season teams ever. They're on pace to have the best regular season defensive rating ever relative to the competition. That's how good of a defensive team they are. They just beat them again. And then they went against the Warriors, who basically the Warriors were undefeatable with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green in the lineup together. They went against the Warriors and won that game as well. This team is really good and really fun to watch as well, man. And though, again, some of these people beneath them, I might take in a 7-game series, I'm not looking at the Rockets as a team that's just about to be this pushover like some people might be looking at them as. But I do think this playoff will be important, right? A lot of people are trying to mock up the Houston Rockets acquiring a 1A player so like they can be in that conversation. Hypothetically, they go out and get Kevin Durant, they go out to get Devin Booker, they go out to get somebody else that's on the market that's really, really good. You look at that Rockets team, oh, now they have a closer? But I also think there's a world where they don't do that at all. Just looking at the progression of the players that they've already seen in this roster. Alperen Şengün's an all-star this season, a warranted all-star this season. Thompson is everybody's favorite young player in basketball, right? And maybe there's a world where they just say, no, we're completely okay because y'all might be bugging on what y'all want for Kevin Durant right now. You know what I'm saying? So we're okay with continuing to be a young, exciting, and good team and see where our current players progress. They got good people in charge. I trust they'll figure it out. You know, you do look at it and say like, oh, guys like Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, these younger dudes in the roster that a lot of people believe in don't really get enough time, and that maybe that is a reason to consolidate and go out to get another dude, which I can understand. But overall, I know I've been all over the place. This season has been so great for the Houston Rockets, and I'm hoping y'all watching and appreciating it.